Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce Good Morning Breakfast. A special welcome to our guests that I'll introduce later. My name is Greg Durocher, and I'm President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, and we thank you for taking the time to join us online. The Chamber's vision is to inspire change and lead in fostering greatness in our community and economic prosperity to make Cambridge the most envied city to live, work, play, and build a business in. Don't forget, our hashtag today is CAMBCOC. And please, if you post on there, please use the hashtag so that we can follow along with your comments as well. At this time, I'd like to introduce our board members that are with us this morning. Our treasurer, Terry Kratz from HFK McRae and Wilson LLP. Our board chair, Darren Drulard from Powerline Logistics Services. Director Rena Hawkins from H4 Logistics, and Director Jason Warmington from Hall-Link RSB Inc. as well. And I'd like to introduce some special dignitaries that we have with us this morning as well. From the City of Cambridge, Councillors Donna Reed, Scott Hamilton, Nicholas Ermetta, Pam Wolf, and Shannon Adshade. Thank you for joining us. And the mayors of Kitchener and Waterloo, Barry Verbanovic and Dave Jaworski, thank you for joining us. And as well, regional councillors Helen Jowett, Carl Kiefer, and Jim Erb. And I want to also point out that we also have another special guest of mine, my counterpart and friend over in Guelph, the president and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, Shakiba Shayani, is with us as well. Now, everybody knows, and I say this all the time, that we can't do this without our great corporate sponsors. And thank you to TD and Graham Matthew for once again supporting our breakfast program. And now I'd like to introduce Mike Arndt from Graham Matthew to bring greetings.
Well, good morning, Cambridge. It's our pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you, Greg, for the introduction. And pleased to bring greetings today on behalf of the partners and staff at Graham Matthew and our co-sponsors at TD. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to our three guest mayors for joining us this morning. I know December is an incredibly busy time in the municipal world, and certainly I can imagine COVID is not helping matters at this time of year. So thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. We do appreciate it, and we look forward to your comments. And certainly thanks again to the Chamber for the opportunity to sponsor the breakfast series along with TD. It's a real nice pleasure for our firm to be able to do that. So thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be a part of this today, and we hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, very much. Appreciate it. Other sponsors that have supported this program as well, Conestoga College Institute for Advanced Learning, Enbridge Gas, Inc., Energy Plus, Inc., Gordon J. Wallace, Remax Real Estate Center Brokerage, Hall-Link RSB, Inc., HeartZap Safety Training and Equipment, and H4 Logistics, Inc., and Stratus Building Solutions as well. Thank you all very much. We can't do this without you, so we certainly appreciate the opportunity you give us to present these great programs. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guests, and I'm going to go through the introductions first before they come on, but just to highlight some of the attributes to our guests. Mayor Kathryn McGarry was elected mayor on October the 18th, or October 2018. And formerly, she was the MPP for Cambridge, who held positions of Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, as well as the Minister of Transportation. But most notably, she has been a registered nurse for over 35 years as well. And Mayor Cam Guthrie from Guelph, he was first elected mayor in 2014 and subsequently re-elected in 2018. He is currently the chair of the Large Urban Mayors Caucus of Ontario, a group of 28 mayors with populations of over 100,000, a longtime local entrepreneur and community volunteer. And of course, the mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, first elected mayor of Brampton in October of 2018. He was also elected MP for Barrie in 2006 and re-elected in 2008 and 2011. In 2015, he was elected leader of the Ontario PC Party. He graduated from the University of Windsor with a law degree and began his law practice in Brampton. Welcome to our three mayors. Join us now, please. Hey, look at this good group of hardworking individuals. Patrick there with his mask all donned and ready to go, and it's terrific to have you. We certainly appreciate the fact that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to come. First of all, I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit, boast a little bit. Before we were on, Cam was really boasting about Guelph, so we're going to give everybody else the opportunity to boast about their community as well. And we'll start with Kathryn, our own mayor. Kathryn, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Cambridge and how we're doing so far?
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to my fellow mayors from Ontario Big City Mayors, Mayor Cam and Mayor Patrick. Delighted to have you with us today in what I know Greg has said before is the center of the universe, and that's Cambridge. And I know you may have different opinions, but we think that Cambridge is pretty great. It's a beautiful, historic riverfront city, and it's a place where families really want to live and work and play. Due to our skilled labor force and proximity to major centers, it's a place where businesses really want to set down their roots and grow here, right in Cambridge. Our real estate prices hold high. We're one of the fastest growing communities in Canada, and our population continues to grow. We're well positioned to weather this recent storm, the pandemic, but this is certainly an area where we are looking forward to growing economically and with our communities into the future.
Awesome. Mayor Guthrie, continue with your boasting.
Thanks. Well, at least you all know I'm a cheerleader for Guelph then. I'm boasting away. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, to the chamber, to my fellow colleagues. Hello again to you. We've been seeing each other a lot virtually, especially these last several months with COVID. So welcome to you and to many other colleagues on the line too. Hello, that might be joining us today. Thank you to the sponsors too. This stuff can't happen, as you said, Greg, without the sponsors. So it's fantastic. Guelph is doing very well as well. I think from a regional perspective, we are all sort of in this together. And that's a catchphrase that's been had mostly with COVID. But actually, before COVID started, this "we're in this together" catchphrase has really defined our region, whether that be Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, and a little bit more of the bigger area. We're all really doing very well. Guelph's weathering the storm as well, and we are one of the top communities for volunteerism. We are one of the top communities for growth, of course, as well as Cambridge. And what we're also seeing in Guelph over, again, many years, even before COVID hit, is we're one of the lowest unemployment rates in all of Canada consistently. And that's just because of the people in Guelph. We always pull together, our businesses, our communities, our nonprofits, and other agencies. We really pull together to make things happen. And so with that, I'll be quiet and give it back to you, Greg, and maybe Mayor Brown can take it from there.
Well, I think it's fun to have Mayor Brown on as well, because I can tell you that anybody out there who has received a package from Amazon, it probably was packed and shipped out by Patrick himself, because they have the distribution center. But Patrick, give us a little rundown on Brampton right now and where you're taking it and where it's going.
Well, first of all, let me just say it's great to be here for this a chamber virtual breakfast, to be with my old friend Cam Guthrie and my former colleague Kathryn McGarry. We came from different partisan perspectives, but I always considered Kathryn a friend and a colleague. We work very well together, so it's now a real privilege to work with her in municipal politics. In terms of this pandemic, Brampton has been hit hard. The two largest segments of our workforce are transportation, logistics, and food processing. These are considered essential workplaces, but they've had a high challenge with COVID. These tend to be some of the most high-risk professions. And you look at Amazon, where they've had I'm not allowed to release the number of cases, but there's been a high number of cases, with truckers. In 2 months in the spring, we had 150 cases. And so if you use a grocery store in Cambridge, likely a Brampton food processor has not only processed the food, but a trucker or a person that worked for a transportation company was involved in bringing in that food to Canada. On top of the fact that the logistics sector, if you order Christmas gifts for Christmas, likely is been packaged in Brampton, where 80% of the Amazon parcels are packaged. And so we're on the forefront of Canada's supply chain. We're on the forefront of Canada's food security, but it does come with a risk. And we're doing our best to get through that. The community is stepping up, supporting each other. The outpouring of generosity to local food banks, to helping essential workers. There's been parades where people go out on their front lawns and bang pots and pans for healthcare workers. It's just been beautiful to see that sense of collective duty. And we're excited that we're in the final few months, hopefully, with a vaccine on the horizon, that this difficult 2020 will be behind us soon enough. And I would say we're working collectively with other municipalities. One of the reasons that our financial pictures are intact is Kathryn, Cam, myself, we all work together to advocate to the provincial and federal governments to get that safe restart agreement. So I think all our municipalities, we've taken a body check, but we're doing well, we're standing, and we're going to get through 2020.
And this is not a problem at all, Patrick, because I think it's absolutely wonderful. But we can actually hear the evidence of you actually having breakfast this morning. And I want to congratulate you on the fact that you and your wife have just revealed that you've got another little one on the way. And this time it's going to round out your family to that $1 million family of having a boy and a girl. So congratulations, and enjoy your breakfast with your family there.
Well, thank you, Greg. I'm not having breakfast, but Theodore likes to participate in all my Zoom calls. It's very difficult to get a rambunctious 16-month-old to settle down. He likes time with his dad, which is one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is that we get to do so much of this work from the confines of our own home, which also means more diaper duty and breakfast and lunch and dinner duty.
Well, Theodore is more than welcome to come on to our Zoom calls as well. We appreciate his attendance too, so that's great. We did see some, I think, some brilliance, and this question we'll just go around the horn. Saw some brilliance from some local companies, namely Linamar and Toyota, who obviously had extensive and complete pandemic plans all ready to go. We remember SARS, and I know all of you will remember when SARS came. And if you remember, just prior to SARS, you never saw hand gel, little pump bottles on countertops. But after SARS, even though it was kind of just a little blip, we started to see hand sanitizer was pretty regular on most businesses you would walk into. There was always a little bottle there. And so we started to, learn some new things. But the talk of the day at that point was pandemic planning. And that's when it got really big, where companies and municipalities and organizations all started to do pandemic planning. I think, though, as time kind of went on, maybe it fell off the table. Maybe we kind of got to the point where we said, we had SARS, but that was so long ago that it's, we're never going to have that real big catastrophic situation. I guess what interests me is when I saw the initiatives that Linamar in Guelph, for example, and probably, Patrick, some other companies in Brampton, and Toyota here in Cambridge, how they instituted almost instantly their pandemic plans and their initiatives around their workforce and what they can do to remedy their business or ready their business for this. Do you think that the pandemic plans that your particular municipalities or the regions that you operated in, or counties for that matter, were well thought out, complete, and ready to go? And were there any surprises through that all of a sudden you said, why wasn't this in the pandemic plan, or we didn't know that something like this was happening? Why don't we start with Mayor Brown?
Well, I'd say I think it's fair to acknowledge this is uncharted territory. As much as we've been through SARS, this is very different. I think a global pandemic of this nature really doesn't happen maybe once every 100 years. I think we've been learning as it goes. And at the beginning, they were shutting down schools. You're even scared to get your groceries because you're worried that there could be COVID on the packaging. And I think we've learned a great deal in the last 9 months in terms of what is low risk and what is higher risk. And we've been able to evolve pandemic plans with that. We all have emergency management teams, but you really don't know what you're into until you're into it. And I think communities have adapted. And so there are companies that weren't producing PPE that are now making PPE. There's companies that are making medical equipment that never anticipated they'd be making medical equipment. And you saw a number of stories on the news about companies that all of a sudden were making sanitizer. And so I think any successful pandemic plan, any successful emergency plan has to adapt because you can't predict the future.
Yeah, interesting. Cam, what are your thoughts?
So I would say ditto to everything that Patrick just said there. And I would say that one of the things that I did find in Guelph, you mentioned Linamar and there's others, that the ability to pivot, and I know that's a catchphrase too, pivot was really phenomenal. And what I saw not only with Linamar, but with other manufacturing and other institutions even in town was they always put, obviously the company was so important to them to keep that going, but they always put the health and safety of their employees first. And added to that was like, and how can we keep going? So pivoting to PPE, Linamar making ventilators as an example, that really helped out. Also having them join, like we had a task force at the city in regards to economic recovery with COVID. So having them join a government institution to be at the table to give their advice and feedback on things also helped. And then also other institutions, not just Linamar, they also helped keep the municipality, the government in the loop on advocacy work as well. So it became not as siloed with the response to the pandemic, with their emergency methods and things that they were doing to try to tackle this issue. It was not just all hands on deck for their own companies, but it was to include and grab others from other institutions. So the advocacy work was stronger as we had to maybe go to upper levels of government as well. Patrick and Kathryn will nod their heads in agreement here. We have to, by law, actually go through emergency planning every year. And the scenarios that we get are, sometimes, there's contamination in the water. What do you do? There's been a gas line explosion. What do you do? We actually had one about a pandemic, I think just a couple of years ago, I was told. So our ability we were able to attack the issue pretty quickly. I would say the only thing in Guelph that we needed to be, and I think this could be echoed everywhere, that could be is a hindsight 2020 issue, was the PPE issue. I think we were all a little bit taken aback by that everywhere, which is why I'm thankful that both the provincial government and the federal government are really making sure that the sort of made in Ontario, made in Canada work is being done for PPE, ventilators, things, so that in the future, if something like this happens again, we're all a lot more prepared.
Yeah, and I think, it's refreshing to hear, and I think you'd all would agree that, there are always lessons to learn through everything that you go through. And, a really keen lesson learned there is our dependency on outside influences. And we need to, we're seeing that, something may happen even along the lines of a vaccine manufacturer in Canada as a result of what we're seeing here. Mayor McGarry.
Thank you, Greg. And as you probably know, I had some frontline experience in SARS as a triage nurse, not only in Mississauga at the beginning, but also here at Cambridge Memorial Hospital. And I got to say this out loud. Wow, that expansion at the hospital opened in the nick of time, 8 weeks before the pandemic, 6 weeks before the pandemic. But I also know, because of that time, that the Regional Public Health started on a pandemic plan. And certainly I knew that we had it because I had reviewed it when I was an emerge nurse. But it was brushed off and updated. And the region, of course, runs our public health services and have led the regional response. But I'd have to say that our city in Cambridge was really quick and quite quick out of the gate to create a dedicated pandemic response team right here in the city. And we became part of that larger regional pandemic control group, and we still meet. I can't remember what meeting we're on, 38 or 39, I think. And that ensures a consistency and approach across the region. And it's a collaborative, multi-sectored approach, and it's been adopted by other cities and the regions in the province of Ontario. So we have regular updates from our health table, which is hospital, home and community care, and also in our hospital sectors. We have critical infrastructure tables, emergency services, our municipal sector, business, and communications. And communications, of course, is the key to everything, because the communications team across all area municipalities gets out these critical messages that we need to from public health and from the pandemic control group. But I'd say that one of the biggest challenges has been adjusting to the new normal. No one at the time when our pandemic plan was being dusted off had really thought about working and conducting businesses virtually for months. So we had to adapt to a virtual environment overnight like this. I'm missing my breakfast, Greg. I'm going to say that out loud, but because it's always the best. I'll have to have my mayoral colleagues back. But technology continues to be an issue. Yesterday during budget meeting, we had to shut down completely for 2.5 hours and then relaunch because of some of our IT issues. But staff have been resilient. They've been creative on how we offer services in an ever-changing environment as directives keep changing. And we've had to change many of our standard operating procedures across the city and really across the province. The financial impact's been difficult too. We were, again, early out of the date to approve an economic response plan, and it certainly included a series of measures to help support local residents, our very important businesses, and workers during the challenges. And that cost containment plan came in, I'm going to have to just say it out loud, we did bring in a budget last evening of 1.27% increase in the coming year. But the last big challenge I think we see now as our businesses have been pivoting and adapting to change is COVID fatigue and the frustration that people find. And we're trying to flatten the curve to keep our businesses open and operating. And people are just tired of the message and taking risks. And unfortunately, we see the numbers growing. So the impact is a big concern on our businesses. And we'll continue to support them as we move ahead with order from home, shopping local campaigns, and we have expanded our patio and outdoor space to assist them. But the pandemic plan was key.
Yeah, for sure. And I neglected to mention in the very beginning, but Mayor Guthrie and Mayor Brown do have other meetings at 9:30. So we're going to have time for them to answer one more question or talk about this. And I know this is probably one of the most important ones to them. You know, I tell this all the time to our members that what they need to understand about municipalities is they can't run deficits. It's not like the provincial government and the federal government who can run massive deficits and can borrow money against operating losses. Municipalities cannot do that. They can only borrow money for capital projects. So during this period of time, you know, really municipal governments were not unlike a lot of businesses suffering for various reasons. You know, additional costs come along, containments come along, PPE expenses to municipal governments were huge. So you folks, and along with the business community, actually advocated for the federal government to give support to municipalities as well. My understanding is you did get some support. Was it enough? Was it the right method of delivery, and will there be more required for municipalities? Let's start with Mayor Brown.
Well, it covers about 70% of our operating costs for this past year. It gets us till December 31st. And I should mention, you know, Cam was one of the real big champions of this, you know, in his role as Big City, Ontario Big City Mayor's Chair. You know, he was zealous in his advocacy for Ontario municipalities. And we're fortunate that after relentless pestering that the Prime Minister and the Premier came to the table, because it really is the frontline workers. You look at municipal workers, whether it is firefighters, police officers, paramedics, public health workers, transportation, a transit driver. These are frontline pandemic heroes. I know our transit operators take on a greater risk. I think I've had almost 15 so far in Brampton test positive. And the notion that we wouldn't have money for these frontline heroes, for me, was repugnant. And so I'm glad that the government came to the table. Municipalities can't run deficits. We were able to make our finances work. We let off part-time staff and seasonal capacities, rec centers that were closed. So I think we're the only level of government that has actually had to let people go to make our finances work. But we're good until December 31st. And we just hope that next year we're going to have a similar agreement, and I'm confident we're going to get it, because Kathryn and Cam will go down to Queen's Park with pitchforks if we don't.
Cam, have you got your pitchfork all sharpened up and ready to go?
Yeah, I have two tools as the mayor. I have a shovel for new businesses in the ground and a pitchfork to go to upper levels of government. Well, yeah, Patrick summed it up very well. I think from a Guelph perspective, we're going to be okay for this year. But it really is up in the air. And I could pretty much say this as echoing this comment for all municipalities in Ontario. It's next year that really is up in the air. We did get the Safe Restart money, and that was a massive help. Thank you to the Premier. Thank you to the Prime Minister. Thank you for all the advocacy work from all the mayors and others to get that done. But December 31st is coming up pretty fast. And then we're going to immediately be going into 2021. And we know there will be issues. Just like every municipality in Guelph, we had, I think, upwards of 800 or so that we had to lay off, both part-time and full-time. Transit is the biggest hit across municipalities like Brampton, Cambridge, the region of Waterloo, Guelph, and others. You probably have the entire deficit or reduced revenue hit in every municipality could be attributed to 30 to 40% of that is just transit alone. So moving into 2021, we have collectively had our voice together already, sort of tapping on the shoulders of upper levels of government that this cannot be ignored. We're going to be coming back again. And with budgets in March or April and others coming into the spring next year, there better be some sort of a nod to municipalities that are on the front lines, because we are creatures of the province. We cannot run deficits, and we cannot continue to really have it work this way any longer. And that leads me to my last comment, which is really there's a push now amongst many municipalities, and that we need some type of a new framework. We must have a grown-up and mature discussion with the upper levels of government on how municipalities are funded. We shouldn't be using a pitchfork. We shouldn't be jumping up and down in the corner with our hand up all the time. There should be different mechanisms, financial mechanisms, and tools at our disposal, and how we interact with the upper levels of government needs to be rethought. And this is going to be a conversation that should not be let go. The pandemic has really reared this issue to the front lines, and we need to make sure that we tackle it. And hopefully the upper levels of government respond in a way that changes things for the future for municipalities, so we don't have to be doing this kind of jumping around in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've always said for many years that property taxation is the most unfair type of tax, because it's on the perceived ability to pay, not the actual ability to pay. And there really needs to be some thought and some reform around that. Just before I let the two of you go, and Kathryn, we'll get you on this question as well, but I just wanted to ask Patrick, because I do know the city of Cambridge has passed their budget. Congratulations, Mayor McGarry. Same with Mayor Guthrie. You've also passed a very good budget. Mayor Brown, where are you in your budgeting process?
So our budget passed the final budget committee meeting yesterday, and it will be ratified next Wednesday. We're on a push right now to make Brampton's property taxes more competitive. When I took over 2 years ago, we were among the highest property taxes in the GTHA. And so we're running a zero this year as we have the last 2 years. But don't get envious because we still have higher taxes than both Guelph and Cambridge. I'm just trying to do a little bit of catch up to make sure that we're competitive from an economic development perspective. And so we've been running a value for money process over the last 3 years, really examining every taxpayer dollar spent at Brampton City Hall, and been able to come up with about $50 million of savings over the last 3 years.
Congratulations. And Mayor Guthrie and Mayor Brown, thank you so much for coming this morning. I do know you have to run off to other very important meetings. Mayor McGarry will be sticking around and we'll be carrying on our conversation. So thank you very much. And we'll have you back next year where the mayor can actually feed you a wonderful breakfast right here. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you to my colleagues.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. All the best, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cam.
Your worship, how about you on that conversation? Do you think, like, was it appropriate? Was the message really heard well? And you know, because I know the pain. You and I had conversations about the pain and agony of what's happening from a municipal perspective, and you really have only the property taxpayers to turn to help remedy that. Were you satisfied with the work of the federal and provincial government to help you in your municipality?
Thanks, Greg. And I think Mayor Cam, as the chair for the last couple of years of Ontario Big City Mayors, has said it very well about how much advocacy we did. And he wasn't kidding about the pestering and the pitchfork. You know, they're kind of veiled comments, but indeed, if you consider that Ontario Big City Mayors usually meets 4 times a year, we've done 11 meetings just since March. And those are really around that advocacy piece. And boy, it would have been much easier for us to focus on our own communities if we already had a better deal from the federal and provincial government when it comes to funding municipalities. And so here we are, bleeding red. Our revenues are way down. The city of Cambridge, for instance, projected $2 million worth of, or about $1.5 or $2 million worth of lost revenue this year or more. And the cost of the pandemic is at least a 1.5 million in the city of Cambridge. We have no way to pay for it. So municipalities across Ontario, we're looking at, you know, huge property tax increases next year at the time where our residents' businesses may be failing, they may be out of work, they're barely hanging on themselves. So it seemed incredibly unfair. So we've done a huge advocacy piece, and it's always that caveat at the end. Yes, we're so thankful this year, and it was late in the game, that Cambridge got $3,069,100, and that helped to offset our loss this year. We've been able to carry some over next year, but we're going to see pressure on our budgets for 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years. Who knows? So we do need that better deal. And we've always said to the federal and provincial government, we need a new deal for our municipalities. We need it now. And we need to ensure that this is a much more fair system. You know that municipalities are the one that deliver those critical services. In the end, the upper levels of government may help us to pay for it, but it's the individual that wakes up in our communities that depends on the services, the critical services that we can't not deliver. And I'd have to say, I'm going to give a shout out to Cambridge. Our staff have been truly amazing. I'm going to, now that my other mayor colleagues aren't here, I can say that we were the best. We pivoted really quickly to the cost containment plan, innovative, creative. They've punched well above their weight in every single department and sector. And who knew, even at the beginning of March, that we know what sneeze guards were, or, you know, putting plexiglass between people, or physical distancing. Think what we've learned, but there's a huge cost to that. And we don't see anytime soon being able to have the revenues or the transit fare for the region in any way, shape, or form being able to help us with next year's budget. We've all pulled in our horns this year, but we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I think that's a message to the upper levels of government that we need a far better deal so that we don't have to go and beg. take pitchforks and try and get that critical infrastructure money and operating money that delivers critical services to our municipalities.
You know, again, I've long said, you know, I've really felt that the federal and provincial governments need to come together and look at this property taxation methodology of running municipalities. I know there's a good purpose to it, and there's a reasonable purpose to it. But the fact of the matter is, and everybody out there who's listening, and we all know what percentage of our pay we pay in federal and provincial income taxes. And I can tell you that from a municipal perspective, your municipal taxes, they're about between 4 and 5% of a household or business income is what your property taxes are, or your municipal taxes are. And you're exactly right. We get up in the morning, we expect the roads plowed. We expect there to be street lights on. We expect there to be, you know, sidewalks cleaned in places where there's supposed to be sidewalks cleaned, you know, all of our garbage is taken away. When we flush our toilets, something happens. You know, when we turn on our taps, the water comes in, and all of these things that matter to us every single day come from this one level of government that takes the least amount of our taxation, and is one of the most, in fact, I think, the very most important level of government in each of our daily lives. And so I think you are exactly right. We need to sit down and hammer this out and say, what is a more appropriate and fair way of being able to run municipalities?
I consider, Greg, that it's usually the mayor's fault for everything, or at least the responsibility thereof. And often mayors across Ontario are said that you're passing the buck when you say, well, you have to go to your upper levels of government for that. But in reality, you look at the municipalities, and we're in a two-tier system. And you heard Mayor Guthrie say it's a little easier, at least in a single tier, they can make those decisions. But 60% of our services are provided for by the regional government. And those are the levels as well that have also been advocating incredibly strongly across all of the groups that municipalities are in, whether it's AMO or FCM or the Ontario Big City Mayors. A number of different groups of us, including right here in Cambridge, have been meeting with their MPs and MPPs every week or every second week in order to advocate for those upper levels of government. But in reality, the services are delivered here: mental health, addictions, housing, social services, police services, and we need our upper levels of government to provide that better level so that we can ensure that we are, oh, there is, yes, I see him coming back. He heard me saying that Cambridge was the center of the universe, I think. But I think in essence, that's where Ontario Big City Mayors and other organizations that municipalities belong to can have that advocacy piece and finally get the federal government and provincial government to recognize that we need a different way of funding infrastructure and critical services in municipalities. And if Mayor Guthrie is here, I'm going to hand over
well, we were just continuing that conversation, Cam, about, you know, figuring out the best way to fund municipalities and talking about some of the strains and stresses on the property taxpayer that could arguably say that is unfair, because you've got massive infrastructure requirements in your municipality. You know, you've got deficits in infrastructure, you know, under the ground that needs to be, and there really is no ability for the property taxpayer to be able to keep up with that. So how do we move that forward and get the ears of the provincial and federal governments to really understand that it is actually their responsibility? We're the taxpayers. We're their taxpayers as well. And it's our municipalities that need the support.
Well, thanks for letting me jump back on. My other meeting was a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be, so I hope that's okay. And by all means, if you guys want to be like, get out of here, Guelph, just let me know. I'm out of here. I'll leave if you want. But I appreciate that. And so I didn't hear all of Kathryn's answer. So my apologies if I'm also maybe echoing what she is saying or has said. But I would approach this issue similar to kind of the answer that I left off on, which is the begging that municipalities have to do. It needs to stop. The application-based begging is really what it is. And if we went instead to having to have our staff consistently always filling out applications for whatever kind of grant program is available, imagine the freed up resources that could be put to more resources on, boots on the ground to get stuff done for the municipality that could be had. And I think a lot of this, unfortunately, has to do with politics. The criteria of the upper levels of government, they want to get the picture taken in front of the criteria of the infrastructure projects that they want. And I can somewhat understand that. But the process to get to that point is onerous. It bogs things down. It costs money to do it in that way. We need, a dedicated funding to come in whatever mechanism. Gas tax is one mechanism that can be dedicated, not having to have municipalities jump up and down and beg all the time and filling out applications. I think that would be the first thing. But I will say this as an equal and opposite sort of responsibility and partnership that I would say comes from the municipalities. And that is, if we're going to be looking at this type of a framework, we need to be able to look in internal too. We need to be looking for operational savings at the same time as we're looking for capital and infrastructure money as well. So we can't just be like, give us more money, give us more money, give us more money. And at the same time, we're taxing under the regime of the punitive property tax, and then not doing our role of looking internal to try to do the savings, efficiencies, and more effective way of providing services from an operational standpoint to the taxpayers at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. And I've done a lot of work on this. I sit on an international board, the ACCE, Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. And it's, a lot of my colleagues on that board are Americans. And so you have the opportunity to go through American cities. And I was actually down in the Dallas area a couple of years ago and had lunch actually with the mayor. And we started talking about their funding and their tax rates and all of these kinds of things. And, the reality of it is the property rate payer only pays for, the hardcore, what we would call probably community rate related services. So your baseball diamonds and your, sports arenas and those kinds of things are really dedicated and committed by the local municipal government, and emergency services are as well included in that. But when you get into big projects like transit and transportation and those kinds of things that are, as you both well know, billions of dollars, and the infrastructure underneath the ground that services and allows a municipality to grow and expand, those things are all handled by state level taxes, whether they are sales taxes that are given to the municipality for the particular area they serve, but their taxation policy. That's why we hear, such and such a municipality in Texas has had a 0% or 0.5% increase every year for 20 years. Why? Because those property taxes aren't going to some of those hard infrastructure growth related projects that are really benefiting the entire state. And so, our avenues like that can be leading the large urban mayors caucus. Our avenues like that are looking at best practices and where resources come from, or where you're going to take your challenges to the federal and provincial government.
Yes. Now, just to be very clear, my term as the Ontario Big City Mayor's Chair for the last 2 years, it just ended just a few days ago. And so actually Jeff Lehman, the mayor of Barrie, and Bonnie Crombie from Mississauga is going to be the chair and vice chair of the group. My 2-year term is done, which is why I've lost 20% of my hair. and that's
And kept the rest of us really busy, 3 times
Yeah.
busier than usual.
that's right. That's
We
right.
gained a little bit of hair here, so.
Yeah. So, but saying that the direction of Ontario Big City Mayors and the direction of Kathryn and Patrick and myself, even without that, would probably be aligned to be looking to the upper levels of government again for that type of funding. Before I left on that quick break there for a second, I just said we have to have a mature discussion about how the interactions of the 3 levels of government work. And look, this could be a once in a lifetime maybe opportunity to do that. Maybe the pandemic has actually sprung this forward many years, but we need to be respected as the right order of government that municipalities are. We are the most transparent. We run great budgets because they're all out in the open. We can't run deficits. We engage with the community on everything that we're doing, and we need to be respected in that way. And if we come to the table with that sort of strength, I'm going to call it that strength of unity amongst all of us, we can really, I think, make a difference on how things move forward. It maybe not change under my term. Maybe these are the conversations that start and then they change a little bit later or whatever. I'm hoping I'm around for a while. But you know what? Let's at least have these mature and respectful conversations now because it needs to happen.
Kathryn, you had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to sit on the other side of the table of where large urban mayors and mayors, frankly, from every corner of the province are sitting and saying, yeah, we need to have a fair opportunity. What do you think the appetite is? Maybe not politically, but bureaucratically, where do you think the appetite is for other upper levels of government to sit down and hammer out a new deal?
I think a couple of things. I think that the conversations and certainly the provincial level haven't progressed to the point where I think the municipalities would like them, obviously, because we're still fighting for some of those projects. But on the other hand, the MPs and MPPs, they represent our communities. They represent the ridings that they live in. And I think Mayor Cam has been a little kind this morning. Pitchforks did come out, and we did not mince words in the weekly and bi-weekly meetings that I had with our area MPPs and our regional colleagues that sit in those upper levels of government. And it's really tough when they're in the community and recognize that we didn't get funding. For instance, we didn't get in the stream this time for our new Cambridge Recreation Complex, for instance. We were bypassed. That's an incredibly important project for this city, and this round of funding we didn't get. Well, I went straight to my MPs on that and called them up, and our MPPs, and demand that we have things. But to give you just one quick example, the Resilience Fund came out, the Resilience Infrastructure Stream, and that was the province. And I'm not sure what my honorable colleague got, but for Cambridge, our amount was $615,764. We have to have a shovel-ready project in a number of different ways. It's very open, but we have to begin by September and end by the end of December 2021. So at all times, our asset management team here at the city has to have a number of different infrastructure projects that are in the hopper, ready to go if indeed we have this kind of funding. So you sort of sit on tenterhooks till you get that, but that's not enough for any one project. So you have to go to other levels of government or use some of your reserve funds or other ways of funding a project. Our Cambridge LRT project, phase 2, Onward to Cambridge, is coming. And that's a good, probably $1.5 billion project to start with that we're already trying to gear up for in terms of getting the appropriate amount of funding for phase 2. So we've started on that. But those are examples that I think the MPs and MPPs are recognizing are really important to the municipalities that they represent. But I think Mayor Cam's right. We have to now sit down and hammer out that deal. The cracks in the system right now are readily evident. We really need a new deal.
Yeah, for sure. Doug Ford said we'll never be held hostage again by foreign jurisdictions on PPE and all kinds of, he was, I think, for the most part, pretty forceful on that. He was pretty disgusted with the fact that, we had to rely on foreign countries' suppliers for many of our PPE. I can tell you, we've had some amazing companies step forward. Cam, you mentioned Linamar stepping forward for ventilators. Kathryn, Eclipse Automation here, who jumped right out of the gate to be able to produce masks, N95 and surgical masks as well. So now we know, scientifically speaking, there's a small light at the end of the tunnel. We know that a vaccine is coming. We know that the efficacy of this vaccine is pretty remarkable for vaccines. So what does the future look like for your municipalities, given the fact that some companies have turned it around and started creating PPE? Do you think that there's great opportunity in Southern Ontario to have a dedicated manufacturing force that's going to be able to not only supply our future needs for PPE, but the world's supply for PPE? Let's start with you, Kathryn.
Thank you, Greg. And it's a fantastic question because, as you know, as president of the Chamber of Commerce, that businesses couldn't open or continue operating unless they had adequate supplies of PPE to protect their workers. And so it's not just our frontline health workers and our service providers that needed it, it's everyone. And we really do need a safe supply chain right here in Ontario. So we're never held hostage, as the Premier said, and he was absolutely right. It was horrifying that we might run out. So I can't be more proud of Cambridge companies that have stepped up to pivot and to start manufacturing PPE from, we'll go through a litany of N95 masks, surgical masks, gowns, gloves, a number of components for rapid testing for COVID, for ventilator parts, for you name it. Cambridge companies have come forward, and I can't remember the final tally, but something like 150 businesses have stepped up to also supply even things like hand sanitizer. Instead of going to your local distillery out in Willibald, instead of getting their gin, you could get a bottle of hand sanitizer, which was more important at the time. But pivoted companies such as Prescience, ATS, Eclipse, making PPE really does ensure a safe supply chain in Ontario. And again, amidst the pandemic, Primed, for instance, which is an internationally footprinted company, decided right here in Cambridge to set up shop and start supplying 50 million surgical masks right away, obtained a contract right from the procurement people in the province, and are set to go. So that's just one example, not only jobs and employment and taking over and adaptively reusing a building to get going, but these are some of the success stories that we've had here. And for the companies and businesses themselves, those that I've spoken to now have another revenue stream and another branch in their business. So they've been able to expand the portfolio of products that they provide. And it just could not be more timely or more important to keep our businesses going and expanding.
Yeah. Cam, what's happening in Guelph? Are you excited about the future holds for the development of business and being able to supply these important products?
Yeah, I am. And I think, again, I love to say ditto after Kathryn's answer there. It's easier to say that because we're on the same page, especially the last part she just mentioned about it's a new revenue stream. All of a sudden, it's a new opportunity for these types of businesses to be able to attach to their normal lines of business. So in the future, if anything like this were to rear its ugly head again, the pivot time is instant. And so that would actually help quite a bit. I do believe we need to really wrap ourselves around as best as possible the made in Ontario, made in Canada mantra. So I really do believe that, or the made in Cambridge, made in Guelph mantra, whatever, if you really want to make it local.
I prefer that. Guelph or Cambridge is
Sure,
fine.
sure, yeah.
We all share employees back and forth. That's good.
That's right. That's right. From a Guelph perspective, very quickly, I would say that we have, the Linamars, the Danbys, that have really pivoted to ventilators and things like that. Danby just, I think, announced here that they're going to be starting to make some of the, I think, refrigeration type of units and handling those to send out for the vaccine. So that's wonderful. Again, a Guelph story. And then we have a lot of warehousing here as well. In fact, Medline just opened up, and they're a massive, huge manufacturer of medical equipment, including PPE, right here in Guelph. So that's great. I think it's pretty interesting with the innovation of manufacturing too. I mean, let's really call it what it is. Our own homes could be manufacturing with 3D printers now, right? I mean, it's unbelievable, the advancement in just manufacturing that we can do so very, very local. And then I guess we, from a little bit of a pride point of view, the U of G, the University of Guelph here, that research center of the world for us is phenomenal. They've really helped with a lot of testing and research and development in a lot of testing. The testing kits, quick testing kits for COVID. Again, that's really come about with the collaboration with funding from upper levels of government quickly to the U of G, but also the expertise that is with the University of Guelph as well. So yeah, those are some of the things that are happening. I think we're going to be in a good spot, not only locally, but from a province and a country.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna have a little fun with you now, and I want you to. I don't want you to give any answers to this. We only got a short bit of time, and I do have a couple of other things, but I want to get to. We want to do some polls. We want to figure out if what people out there are really thinking. So the first poll I'm going to get Melissa to put up is: do you think that the pandemic will spark a higher voter turnout next election? So everybody who's out there watching right now, if you wouldn't mind letting us know whether you think yes or no that the pandemic, because there's been lots of engagement from the average everyday people, will this inspire more voting? It doesn't matter whether it's a municipal, provincial, or federal vote. Let's see what you think anyway. And so quickly do that, and I'll give you. There you go. It's been taken down. And 78% think that it will. And maybe that, do you think that there's been so much more voter engagement now, Kathryn, that that's probably going to drive people being more interested in their political leadership?
I hope so, but the city of Cambridge actually just ran a very successful by-election municipally in the middle of the pandemic. First ones to actually call a state of emergency during an election ever. But the voter turnout is always low mid-cycle, and we were disappointed that we didn't get more than the 21%, I think, that was voter turnout. But many more people engaged, Greg, as you said, that are weighing in on things. Certainly our online virtual platforms are much better to engage people, like engagecambridge.ca platforms. That really does help to get people involved. And I think people are understanding that depending on who's in government, it depends on how you're managing our pandemic. And you just look south of our border and the unbelievable numbers of people that are dying and ill from COVID compared to Canada. You start to recognize the importance of who you put in place in order to protect ourselves and ensure that we have what we need going forward. So all I can say is I sure hope so.
Cam, what do you think? You agree with the audience?
Yeah, I think so. I would agree. I think another part of it, though, to consider is the method of how you'll be able to vote. I think that's an important factor too. So, for instance, there was well over, I think, 100 municipalities in Ontario, the last municipal election, that used online voting. So is that going to be a factor in the next election in 2022 on to whether that method of voting will also draw more people to be able to vote because they can do it from the ease of their home or their office in a secure and efficient way. Because people don't want to maybe go out and mingle and be in crowds or line up for voting. So I think it's not only the issues that are going to draw people out to vote, but voter turnout may, I think, increase or decrease based on the method of how you can vote. And I'm certainly hopeful, as long as, we have the security and things in place, that Guelph can maybe look at online voting.
One more quick poll. I know we're running a little bit over time, but that's okay. We're good. Do you believe your online council meetings will continue after? Put that poll up. And this is for the attendees. Do you think that online council meetings should continue? Does that create more opportunity for more people to be involved? I know it would probably me, because then I don't have to get all dressed up in a suit and go down to a council meeting. But and you folks too. You have maybe become accustomed to it. Somebody said to me, "I'm not a boomer anymore. I'm a Zoomer." So I think that's pretty important. Let's have a look at those. Oh, 69% think they should. What do you think about that, Kathryn?
That's interesting. And I think you're right. Some people have complained because they can't come into chambers right now and participate, but sometimes the times that we have council meetings don't allow people to come at various times of the day. There's a lot of shift workers and people that can't come in the evening, for instance. And this way, when we've been having online participation, we're able to call the individual saying, your delegation's coming up. If they're at home, that's fine. If they're at work, they can take maybe 5-10 minutes and call in. And so it is actually a little bit more accessible to those that have accessibility issues or childcare issues. And we have noted that we've had more participation at the moment. I think at some point there will be a component that we may be able to do to continue some online, maybe some hybrid opportunities for, now that our technology is sorted out, have people actually call into the meetings or actually participate virtually in a bricks and mortar type of meeting. So I think at some point we will look to the future to see if that we can accommodate more of the public in our meetings and more flexibility on how we manage our business and still manage to put the business of the corporation forward in a much more robust and participatory way.
Awesome. Cam?
Ditto. I'll make it really simple. I think maybe your next poll question should be, did Cam and Kathryn call each other to try to wear the same color of shirt today?
Cam, I think at the very beginning we were kind of getting zoomed out and all that kind of stuff, but people are starting to say, well, this is the way we do it now. So, it's kind of okay. And I think, I think you're right, Kathryn. I think a hybrid version, because you don't want to, you can't go 100%, but maybe a blend of this where it allows a technology. So if Cam wants to be a delegation at a Cambridge council meeting, he can come in virtually. Of course, he's always welcome. He could come in virtually and vice versa. And I think it does create a better opportunity to get more information, more input, and better results. And that's what you both want, better results of your government. So
I'd have to say the drive time between Zoom meetings has really been greatly reduced.
Yeah, I like that too. I like the fact too that I can get dressed up, put a shirt on, put a nice jacket on, and wear jeans. I think that's absolutely perfect. Anyway, folks, it's been a great discussion. I do want to remind both of you, and you can pass this along. We have our Salute to Women in Business in January, and unfortunately, Kathryn, we're not going to be able to get together and have a great lunch. But let me tell you something. We have some incredible speakers coming up for you, and it's going to be done for online, of course. We have Samra Zafar, who is, if you might remember her, she was all over the news. She wrote a book called The Good Wife: Escaping the Life I Never Chose, which is instantly became a national bestseller. And she was profiled on CBC, CTV, Absolutely incredible woman. We also have another a couple, Melissa McFarland Heidmiller and Julia Walsh. They are social media and brand experts. And I love their statement. She said, we started off as BFFs way back in grade 3. And now as adults, we work side by side, 150 kilometers apart daily, building the mompire of our dreams. And they're going to be fantastic. And then, of course, you probably know Colleen James. And Colleen James, of course, worked for the Region of Waterloo for regional counselors. I know the regional counselors out there will know, remember Colleen. And she's a consultant, but she's also a professor at Conestoga College in the School of Business. And that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And I think both of you will agree that women leading today are not only inspiring, but requiring, as I like to say. We need women in strong leadership roles. And I'm just going to give both of you the last opportunity to talk about women who are leading and doing great things. Go ahead, Kathryn.
Thank you, Greg. And this is an awesome opportunity for both men and women to come out and really hear some of the challenges, but some of the opportunities and some of the balance that women bring in leadership positions. You know, looking around the world right now, you can see some of the strong women leaders in different countries that have sort of brought about some needed change perhaps, and that are leading the way and inspiring other generations of women to continue leading. And I will put this plug out now. In mayors across Canada, only 20% are women. And it's time now to really right the balance so that we do have more equity in our elected politicians in order to continue to lead, because each side brings their own skills. And we do know that governments work better when it is certainly equitable between men and women.
Yeah. Cam?
Well, other than my admiration for Kathryn, of course, as a great leader in her own right, woman as a woman leader just down the road from Guelph, you've been doing an excellent job, might I add. I would say you put me on the spot a little bit here, but I'm going to say Carol Saab, who is the CEO of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM. She's newer on the job, I think in the last, I'm just going to guess maybe 6 months or so, maybe under that. She's doing an excellent job. You know, you've talked and mentioned the Ontario Big City Mayors a couple of times, but really her work has been, I've been watching from afar, obviously, her work and her advocacy role on behalf of municipalities. So it's a little bit of a default because I look to that organization, but I think she's done an excellent job being the voice of municipalities across Canada. And so I would give a shout out to Carol Saab as a great leader in this municipal sort of sector across Canada, which benefits everybody.
Yeah, no question, but there's some great leaders around. I should point out too, Cam, Shakiba Shayani over in Guelph, my colleague with the Guelph Chamber of Commerce.
Of course, I have a list. My Carol.
No, I know you. I know you didn't leave her out.
My mom, my wife. Yeah. You know, I can't forget them.
But I have a conversation with her at least once a month, and she's been really good for Guelph, certainly good for the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and we certainly enjoy her camaraderie as well as her leadership in our organization as well. Kathryn and Cam, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us online. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with three great mayors, two of them that are still with us. Enjoy your day.